Welcome to the pop culture cosmos.
And we're back with another episode of the Pop Culture Cosmos. It's Gerald Glassford. Thanks so much again for joining us. Truly appreciate you doing so on this President's Day weekend. Looking forward to some great conversations in the world of pop culture. But it wouldn't be a pop culture cosmos without a good friend indeed. It is, of course, the great one himself. He is here to try and convince me otherwise in regards to Captain America Brave New World. It is the great one, TJ Johnson. TJ, great to have you here, my friend. Looking forward to some good conversation. We usually are aligned on so many things,
We are. We
but
are.
there's umpteen dozens of MCU movies. We were bound to have a disagreement on one. How are you, my friend?
I'm good, brother. Thanks for having me on the Pop Culture Cosmos. And yes, we were bound to have a disagreement on one. And even in our disagreement, the nice thing is we can remain civil and have a conversation about why we agree to disagree. And that's okay.
Absolutely.
That's a good thing, and it's okay. It's okay to understand why you're wrong. I mean, as long as you at the end of the day understand why you're wrong, it's okay. We'll be good.
I don't know, man. I'll just say this: Captain America: Brave New World is slightly exceeding expectations with $100 million domestic takeaway from the holiday weekend, which will include Monday as well. It's slightly above expectations. It's going to be right around $200 million worldwide, which is a okay start for them. Still not quite what it was with Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, to give people the context of the most recent MCU film in the time frame. Although the second week with those movies are going to be compared because of the huge drop Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania had. So we're going to have to see how that plays out. The argument that you would have,
Mm.
I will throw stats at you to back me up on it, because Rotten Tomatoes has it at a 51%. I think Metacritic, last time I saw it, had a 48%, one of the worst rated MCU films that's out there. Cinema score
Mm.
is B minus, which, as you know, is not that great. But my daughter
Mm.
liked it. She called it one of the best movies of the post-pandemic MCU mix. So you do have someone on your side on it. I'm not saying it's a terrible movie.
Okay.
I did rank it in my lower 10 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is now available on popculturecosmos.wordpress.com. I did put it there, but hey, at least it isn't the Marvels, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay, so if
They
this is
didn't
now
do a
put
show
into
tune. They didn't do a show tune or a dance number or a sing along
no, they
musical.
they didn't shuck and jive, Gerald. They did not do a show tune or a dance number. No. So if we're putting this in your lower 10, what official rating out of 10 would you give it? Is this a 6 out of 10 for you?
I'd
Is this a
probably say it's a five.
5.7?
I think a 5.5. I think a 5.5,
Mm,
between a five and, well, let's give it a 5.75. I think there are some things that are positive about it. In my opinion, I think
mm,
that Anthony Mackie is the hardest working individual in Hollywood and wanted to give his all. I told you I did like the bonding scene that's all too brief and all too short between him and Winter Soldier. Spoilers, by the way. We're going into major
mhm,
spoilers. That's in there. But then again, it's just setting up for what's coming up in May. So,
mhm,
that
mhm,
is what it
mhm,
is. This movie was, if rumors are correct, which I think it's almost substantiated. In fact, it was substantiated somewhat by the director, and the fact that also Seth Rollins kind of let it out of the bag in the first place. But there
mhm,
were several reshoots, and characters that were in were left out. Characters that weren't in the first place, like Giancarlo Esposito, were put in. And
mhm.
by the way, everyone, that's the way he wants it pronounced. So don't at me. He wants it pronounced that way, just to let everybody know. Um, those were put in. Um, there were several reshoots, and you could tell I did argue with TJ earlier about it having the worst post credit scenes because it just seemed like it was just poorly filmed, poorly green screened, and they looked like they were just not even talking at the same time on the same day on the same week. It just, yeah, and plus it provided nothing new on that standpoint. But I will get to the positives. The first is its running time. It's under 2 hours, so it's very briskly paced. So whatever issues you have, or I have with it, as far as the messiness of the plot, uh, poor writing at times, direction wasn't exactly the greatest in the world at times either. I don't dwell on it because I don't have time to dwell on it because it takes you through the process so quickly, and I think that's in its favor. And it gets right to what it does best. The action scenes are some of the best of the non-Avengers um, movies, as far as it's concerned. I'll put it that way. But it tries so hard to be Winter Soldier, and it just can't be. It was like if Winter, as I put in my article, if Winter Soldier, the Eternals, and Incredible Hulk had a baby, it would try hard to be that baby, but it just didn't seem. All these elements just didn't seem to mesh very well for me. At the end of the day, but again, give it a slightly passing rating simply because the fact Harrison Ford, Anthony Mackie tried really hard to make this work, and also Isaiah Bradley's the actor who played Isaiah Bradley, he was really good on screen as well. I give him a lot of credit for whatever was given to him. He did a lot with it. There were some characters there were just not needed, um, and the leader. I don't know if you really, it's nice that they put him in here for a tie-in to the Incredible Hulk, but yeah, it just really he wasn't really utilized that well. Giancarlo Esposito's character, Sidewinder, wasn't really needed in many sense at all. I don't think. And
Mhm.
there were other characters, two other female characters who were just not given much to do and were just there. Um, I just overall thought that again there was a lot of messiness to the writing and the plot that could have been. It could have been something I think a lot better, and it just
Okay.
was. It's something I could see again, but it is just to me what I think is just a movie that could have meant so much more, should have been so much more, but ultimately wasn't. And again, the action scenes is the what I will take away as the most positive because I think those, even though people are complaining about the time Red Hulk had in this film, I think again it is what it is. I just it thought it could have been a lot better, and I think could have been something that could have been really special. And I thought when taking a step back, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, when Marvel said it was going to slow down the number of productions and work more on quality rather than quantity, I was hoping this would really get that kind of love, but it was clear that they still haven't gotten their finger quite on the button as of yet, although I'm hoping they will with Thunderbolts and Fantastic Four.
Okay. All right. That was a
And there's my synopsis right there for you. Please go ahead,
yeah.
like, and
Yeah.
subscribe. There you go.
That's it. Good night, folks. Okay. Well, I don't vehemently disagree with everything you said. There are some things that we are aligned, if you will, in our thought
Mhm.
process. Yes, Jean Carlos. How did you pronounce it? Jean Carlos
He
Esposito.
said, now I've seen him alive because he actually did this. He did this in a,
Hmm.
he was doing an interview and he gave his
Hmm.
Giancarlo Esposito.
Giancarlo Esposito. I like it.
Yes.
Giancarlo Esposito. Okay,
Yeah, it's the way he
him.
said it. That's just the way I'm saying
Hey,
it.
no,
It's the way
that's
he said
absolutely
it.
that sounds good. Giancarlo Esposito. I agree. I agree. He was absolutely not necessary. They did not need to add him to this whatsoever. I think that was the way giving it a bit of a star power. Obviously, he made his big name in Breaking Bad, and He's done some video games since then as
Oh, he's
well.
all over the
So
place. I mean,
he's
if
all
we
over the place.
say
Yeah.
Anthony Mackie is the hardest working individual in Hollywood, he's like right behind. So
Yeah,
yes.
he's right there. He's a busy guy himself. So they wanted to give this a bit of a star power. So was it a bit of a gratuitous cameo or gratuitous, hiring of somebody just for a bit of a big name attached to it? Sure. But it wouldn't
Unless
be the
they have
first
plans
time.
for him long term, which for
Yeah.
a
But
street
for a movie that
level,
you would have had to kind of establish that. And they did
yeah,
no such thing at all. So
he's supposed to be breaking out of a low security prison anytime soon. So watch out for that,
yeah.
TJ.
Well, there
Yeah,
you go.
he if he's brought back into something, okay, but he's still a lower level, human level bad guy. So I don't know
Yeah.
how much imprint he can make into the MCU. Was it just to get shoehorn Giancarlo Esposito in the MCU? Was because he's been in Star Wars, he's been in all this stuff, Gentlemen, all this stuff. Is it just to
Yeah.
get him? Yeah, yeah. It's,
I wouldn't doubt it. They tend to have this thing where they work with characters enough times. They work with not characters. They work with actors and actresses enough times to where they just like to keep them in the same family, like to keep them in the same
Is
wheelhouse.
he
So
like,
I wouldn't.
oh, we could get him? We can get
Yeah,
Esposito? Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
absolutely.
Do it, do it.
Yeah. I worked with him before. He was great. He was great. He was great. Um,
Forget about it. Do all this. Worry about all that stuff later. How to really
yeah,
integrate him into the.
yeah. Forget that Seth Rollins guy. I don't even know who he is. What does he do, anyways?
Well, I don't know
Um,
about the. See, I don't know how good or bad the Serpent Society stuff was going to be in the first place. Obviously, either
I mean, for
test
them to have cut
market,
it, yeah,
yeah,
it
they
couldn't have done
or
well.
somebody, yeah, yeah. We don't know if that's the case, but yeah, just putting Esposito in there instead of them,
Mm,
I don't know what its purpose it served. Maybe you should
yeah,
have just
and
left the Serpent Society thing out altogether. You could have just said, as far as again spoilers, because it deals with Samuel Stearns, the leader,
mhm,
uh, dealing with Serpent Society as far as the transfer or the acquisition of a adamantium.
mhm.
And the thing is, they could have just named any group from that, or ex Hydra people, or they just anything could have served for that instead of bringing the Serpent Society, because the Serpent Society just or anything relating to it in this movie was just as much an afterthought. It just I don't know what purpose it serves. So
Well, I think yes, I don't disagree with you, but you have this entire tapestry of characters and factions and allegiances. Why put a random face or why put a random group in there where you can use somebody that's actually or a group that's actually known in the Marvel lore. So while
yeah,
I'm not super familiar with the Serpentine, um, their organization. At least they are of the Marvel lore. So if I have access to all these characters, I'm not going to use a no-name group. I'm going to use a group or faction that maybe somebody has an off chance of being familiar with, and I can use characters that somebody has the off chance of being familiar with. So I don't really have a problem with them using that group. Would it be nicer to have them use in a bigger way? Okay, sure, fair. But at the same token, you're not going to be able to use. They have too many characters. You got too many different people to dive into, too many different stories to dive into. You're not going to be able to get everybody um, screen time or give everybody the ability to endear themselves to the community. So sometimes you got to just take your punches where they are. So I don't think I put too much stake into the group per se. What I would what I would put stake into is the fact that this movie, and this is gonna kind of touch back to, what we were kind of talking about generally earlier. We were talking about, you and I were talking off air about spoiler or not spoiler, but the post credit scene. This
hmm
entire movie for me was a big post credit scene from the standpoint of it did a lot of wrapping up some dangling story threads that had been there for decades at this point, right? I mean, we're talking
yes,
about the
for 16
Incredible Hulk
years.
for 16 years, right? We've had these dangling story threads about the Incredible Hulk, and they even brought back Betty. Again, spoiler alert for everybody that has not
Is that
seen this yet.
is that really
Mhm.
her, or is it really her? I'm just
As
saying.
far as I'm concerned, it's her. Rather
Okay,
somebody
did they
proves to you that
de-age
it's not.
her for some unknown reason when they really didn't need to, because the fact it is 16, 17 years later? So
Yeah, it's quite possible. They wanted to have her look very, very similar to how she looked in The Incredible Hulk. So there may be some de-aging process. I haven't seen her um anytime recently to be able to tell you, oh yeah, she's considerably older or not. These are Hollywood actors and actresses. They tend to stay young for a very long time. With all that being said, I'm not I'm not upset about the fact that this storyline was very, as you mentioned, it was very concise. It was a very, very short, very slim runtime, which is a good thing because there's not a lot of room for convoluted stories. So this is kind of where the whole cuts of Seth Rollins and whomever else and however more of this serpentine organization that needed to be. They just told the bare minimum of story from the standpoint of what needs to be told to progress the MCU forward. Now, here's what I loved about the Captain America film. And when I say loved, I rate this movie higher than you, obviously. I rate this movie like an 8.5, maybe out of 10. While I didn't think this was the best, I certainly thought of it was worthy of the Captain America title. And
Mhm.
here's why I say that. Anthony Mackie caught a lot of slack for making it quotes about how he felt like Captain America wasn't just about being, it wasn't about being American. It wasn't about, it wasn't just all about America. It was about standing up for what was right in spite of circumstances, in spite of uh, everything else telling you to go a different direction. You do the right thing, right? That's what he was trying to say that Captain America represents. And he said nothing different than what Chris Evans said um, in a different interview a while back. But he caught a lot of flack for it for whatever reason. So in seeing this film and seeing the way he has a certain earnest to him in regards to how he handles being Captain America, understanding his limitations physically, understanding that and wrestling with the idea of maybe I should have took the super serum. Maybe I should have, done this. If I could have took the super soldier serum, maybe I would have been able to prevent this or I'd have been able to do this. And having that internal struggle, that dialogue, which is to the scene that you were mentioning before about him having the moment with Bucky, just kind of talking about it, and then again reaffirming why he was picked to don the shield and why he was picked to be the next Captain America. I thought that he brought a lot of heart to this role, and especially in a time where people have been begging for Chris Evans to come back. People have been pining and have been, grasping at straws for every possible opportunity he has to come back into this role as Steve Rogers. And that can't be lost on Anthony Mackie. That can't be lost on Disney. That can't be lost um on anybody that understands the significance of that. So with those massive reshoots, there was some concern for me as well because knowing that everybody was so high on wanting Chris Evans back, they realized that they had to have something somewhat decent to put out. You're not going to forget about Chris Evans, but you're going to be able to at least pay homage to his performance and who he was, and more so than just a quick quip by Thaddeus Ross saying you're no Steve Rogers. Yeah, well, he recognizes that. Sam Wilson recognizes that he's no Steve Rogers in many many different respects, but in many ways they share a lot of similar qualities. And as Bucky mentioned too, they give them something to aspire to be like. Maybe not um, every person, but the vast majority of people aspire to be something like that. I think this movie really brought forth the everyman in Anthony Mackie and allowed the everyman to have the ability to really change the course of things and how even one person can still make a difference. I thought this movie had a lot of those kind of moments. Yes, I do believe that there were people that just didn't need to be there. Again, we talked about Jan Carlos. He did not need to be there. Um, the other, and I have no idea what this young lady's name is, but the lady that was the other part of, I guess she was part of the Red Room, but was part of,
Yeah,
President's
yeah, that
Secret
she
Service.
was
I can't
given
think of her.
absolutely nothing. Nothing.
Yeah, nothing. I don't even know her name. I don't know what she was really there for. I don't
And
know
I
why it
understand
is
there was
that.
controversy because of who she was portraying and what from origin, from what country and all that. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
she was
it
supposed to be
turned
like an
out to be,
Israeli superhero or something like
yeah,
that, from what
turned
I
out to
understood.
be
Yeah.
nothing.
Yes,
Nothing.
absolutely.
Yeah. I felt bad for her because
Absolutely.
she's just walking through this, through all this type of stuff and the movie and nothing. And
Yeah,
Shira Haas is the actress's name,
gotcha.
playing Ruth Bat
Yes.
Saroff. And again, it is just like, why is she here? The inside leak
Hmm.
for Anthony Mackie, which was Layla Taylor in the movie, as far as her character, Zosha
Hmm.
Roquemore.
Hmm.
She did nothing. She was, just,
Well, she
she
had
was
a
given
little bit.
nothing. She was given nothing,
She
and
made something out of it though. She was kind of the person that was able to really spot that
I don't know.
Ross was acting a little weird. She was the
She's
one
a
that
good
was given
actress. I just wish she was
absolutely.
given something more meatier.
Well,
And it's like,
very,
okay,
very true.
you're supposed to automatically know that, I have an insight. It's like, okay, what's the history between these two? You're not really giving even any context for their relationship, although she's just an inside knowledge person for Anthony Mackie, because she's so close to the present.
Hmm.
Again, these were not very fleshed out characters, and I just wanted them
No,
to get more fleshed out. But then again, it goes to the, okay, if you want to do that, you're going to have to increase the runtime. And again,
exactly.
for me, the decreased runtime was probably better off for this movie to be acceptable as it is.
Well, I think the decreased runtime was better off for this movie to be acceptable in general from the standpoint of, again,
Mhm.
people have been pining for Chris Evans to return to this role. So we needed to give them something short, concise, that told a strong enough story to move the chains forward, if you will.
Mhm.
And again, not let you forget about Chris Evans, but kind of let you say, okay, well, we're moving on. Let's move on. Let's not be leered. Let's not, stay on this point for too long. Let's just move forward. Let's tell a good quick story. Let's not give it too much time to fester or too much time to really be in people's mind. Let's just try to move forward as briskly and quickly as possible.
Well,
I
another
don't
another
think
thing I
that.
want to mention, because we talked about there were some characters that weren't given anything. Did you realize a character from the comic books, Copperhead, was in the film?
Mhm. I did not realize it until after I read a
Yeah,
different
until you
review, and I
read
was like, oh
yeah,
yeah.
because he was never identified as Copperhead. He's just a
Nope.
bad guy that was in the movie for 2 minutes, getting like into a fist fight with Anthony Mackie, and it just is like, there's a character. Why did you want to bring a is you because it was obviously reshoots, because if you're following Giancarlo Esposito, which this did, he was brought in as well. Is it because you wanted to bring another Game of Thrones actor into this? I don't
Of
know. It
course.
just it's eh, I don't know. This again. These are some of the things that make it for a mess for me, a little bit of a mess for me, and something I can't strongly recommend. I'll just say
Okay,
that.
so your mess, if you will, and I'm using that term just because that's what you describe it as. The mess that you're describing is from the standpoint of they've got these characters that they aren't doing anything with, they're not fleshing them out. So you really were looking for a more enriched experience, is what I'm understanding.
Yeah,
That's
well,
kind
but
of what I'm
also
getting
the
from what you're
plot.
saying.
It's also the plot as well. They're supposed to be fighting over the Tiamat Island, and the discovery of adamantium, and this treaty is so important, that gets dragged out over the course of the film, whether or not it's going to be signed, and the president Harrison Ford battling with the various prime ministers. Uh, eh, Again, it just, to me, it was just something that they tried to find something that they could stretch over the course of 2 hours, which almost turned into World War III over and all that. And again, it was uh, just not hitting, on all cylinders. I think, again, there's the list of, if you look at the list of credits, there's 5 writers on this, and it looks like it has been written by 5 different people, putting something in there. Oh wait, I can put, what if we did this? And then somebody else chiming in, oh, and what if we did this? And it just seemed like it's a whole bunch of different ideas, trying to put into one storyline, and for me, it just didn't always work.
Mm, mm. Okay.
But I did give it, like I said, the act. Let's talk about the positive. The action scenes.
Absolutely.
The action scenes I thought were really strong. They tried, especially in the first half of the movie, tried to emulate the Winter Soldier, and did somewhat of a decent job in doing so on the action scenes as part of that. Especially you're believing because Anthony Mackie's character does not have the super soldier serum, it makes it for a more believable street level type brawl in many cases, which is I think benefited the film in that sense. But yeah, and then of course at the very end he has the battle with Red Hulk, which allows it to be, I guess, something that again leaves you wanting more to see if Harrison Ford's Red Hulk will show up again. But yeah, I found the positives to be in how the action sequences were filmed and done. I'll give that a plus. This is the reason why it carried the film to a slightly positive score for me.
Okay, all right. Well, I definitely agree with you. I think the action scenes were definitely some of the highlights. Considering again the fact that he's no super soldier, they definitely went out of their way to establish him as a much more formidable uh fighter
The Battle of
than
Tiamat
he's.
Island, the Battle of Tiamat Island, and them trying to Falcon and Captain America trying to save and stave off a impending world war between nations. I thought that was
Yeah,
really something that was really good. That was filmed
I
really well.
agree. I agree. I feel like there was the right amount of tension, the right amount of build up for that. I feel like the payoff was actually very, very well done too. Also, um, I enjoy the fact that there was a lot of Maline and was frustration that there was only 7 minutes, 5 minutes, 6 minutes, whatever the number was of Red Hulk in this film.
Mhm.
And I tend to like the that approach a bit more. I think especially with such a heavy CGI character as the Hulk, I think less is more. And I think
Mhm.
understanding that the Hulk is in that iteration, the Hulk is a bit of a monster. And I think he should have been saved for the very end, very similar to how the Abomination was saved for the end of the original Incredible Hulk back in 2008. He didn't have a ton of on time screen or on screen time, but his time on screen was very, very memorable. I like the idea of less is more in this regards, um, especially because the CGI that was used, I do have to, knock them for this. The CGI that was used was shoddy. It was some shoddy CGI. Red Hulk looked pretty good, but that was about it. That was probably the best CGI in the film was the Red Hulk. Everything else that and use any type of CGI, um, you could really tell it just didn't have the same care. That rescue scene, I take that back. That rescue scene was pretty good. But as we as we both have already kind of talked about the end credits scene, yep, the CGI was really terrible there. The green screen use was really, really terrible there, no doubt about that. And some other areas where it just didn't have the same level of care and didn't have the same level of love. And those are some of the frustrations that you would have, that I would have with this film from the standpoint of, Anthony Mackie has been working in the MCU for quite some time now and has been a great addition um, to the MCU. He played a great Cap Jr. To Captain America, and he really deserves his time to shine. He really deserves this opportunity that he's finally given to headline a Marvel film. And I think that when you look at some of the the turmoil and the trouble that this film had coming to fruition, when you look at some of the um, different issues that you find in the film, it's disheartening to a little bit that as you and I both mentioned, he just deserved better. He deserved better than that. Um, but that doesn't mean for me that the film was bad. I think the film was good considering all the things that it took to get to this point. I think the film worked on a lot of different levels. Of course, there's some things that didn't work, but that's going to be every film. And I'm actually very pleased with how it all turned out ultimately. Now, I'm the first person to admit that I want Chris Evans back as Captain America, but that's not at the expense of Anthony Mackie.
I want him as
That's
evil Captain America. I'm sorry. I'm kind of digging it. I just wish it had all been a surprise. him, whatever the evil Avengers plan that they might have be making up in Doctor Doom's world. Robert Downey Jr. I told you before, I wanted it
Yeah.
just to be a surprise. I don't know
Yeah.
what they had to gain by saying, "Hey,
They
RDJ and
needed to
Bruce."
win. That's what they had. They needed to win. They've been getting their butts kicked, and right now it's at the point where the MCU is almost a you love to hate them type deal. Where it's getting that polarizing as far as people are concerned, and this is why some people are just very very concerned with Kevin Feige and the direction that Marvel is going as of late. So they had no choice but to reveal Robert Downey Jr. One, it's Robert Downey Jr. So anytime somebody would have filmed him anywhere near a Marvel production or a film studio that could have likely possibly been tied to Marvel, it was just going to be you weren't going to get out of that. So I think they needed to win. They needed to say, "Hey, we've got Robert Downey Jr., so stay with us." And they weren't going to be able to keep that cat in the bag, anyways. So for that particular thing, I don't think they really had a choice. I agree. I wish that they would have been able to hide that and keep that a bit of a secret, but it didn't seem realistic to me in this day and
And by the
age.
way, while we're on the subject, and once again, I'm on with TJ Johnson. Truly appreciate him stopping by as we go into
Yeah,
depth
man.
on Captain America: Brave New World. Um, Tim Blake Nelson, who played
Yes.
the leader, I thought he
Yep.
did okay. He's a really good actor.
Mhm.
But if you've got that smart a brain, wouldn't be the best thing to do if you're President Ross is to ask him to come up with ideas to cure cancer or to find ways to feed the hungry around the world or something like that
Oh,
that's noble.
we're getting into different territory with that kind
Now,
of questioning. I mean,
if he's that smart to go ahead and come up with
mm,
technology that'll just, some flashing images or a cool old song to go ahead and do some mind control stuff. If
mhm,
that's the case, wouldn't you just say, "Hey, you know what? While you're at creating all this evil stuff over here, there's this cancers thing. The cancer thing.
mm,
I'd like to go ahead and see if you could work on that, try and get that cured." Just saying. Just
I'm just saying, Gerald, art often imitates life, and there's no money in curing it. There's only money in taking care of the treatments.
I
I'm
don't
just
know.
saying, I'm just
Pharmaceutical
saying,
companies kind of
there's
disagree
no
with you on that.
no, they don't. That's what I'm saying. There's no money in curing anything. There's money in treating it. There's not
Mm,
money in curing it. If you cure it, you don't have it anymore, and I can't treat you any further.
mm,
There's no
all
money in
right.
curing. It's all in treatments.
Well, there's a lot of money, yes. But evolution of humans saying once cancer is got rid of, I'm sure something else would come along. So, uh,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely.
But again, I thought the leader was okay as the
Yes.
overall uh, patriarch, the guy pulling everything as far as the strings are concerned. So, yeah, it was
Mhm.
fine for what it was. But
Yeah.
I just think he and his character could have been given more to do since it's been so long since we've seen him in the movie that was once the stepchild of the MCU, which has now been brought,
Right.
embraced, and fully back in there. So,
Right.
um, uh, I don't know. At this point, I just think again, for me, it was just a lot of ideas thrown together.
Mhm.
They originally made it. They didn't like or didn't test well in some areas, and they said, "Okay, we need to make some things happen and change some things." They added some things, took some things out, and what they got was a little bit of a mess for me overall.
Yeah. I think that's fair. I think for me, it streamlined the entire process a little bit, and I enjoy the references to the past MCU films and tying up a lot of those loose ends, and even sprinkling some new stuff with the introduction of adamantium to the MCU officially. I'm
Mm.
sure there's going to be something where it shows that when that island was there, somebody else found adamantium way before this and was experimenting with it. Blah 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 blah. But I like the official introduction of adamantium and what that means for the future. I like that I like that Kevin Feige
Tying it to
sprinkled
the
in
Eternals.
the ties to the Eternals, sprinkling in X-Men, sprinkling in little Easter eggs and stuff here and there. I enjoy that. I wish that at some point, I think at some point in the near future, we're gonna have to really Kevin Feige's gonna have to really kind of just full force embrace the X-Men and bring them in. I know that there's been rumors about who's gonna be who and who's playing Storm, who's playing Wolverine. Are we gonna have Henry Cavill playing Wolverine? Are we going to, you know, who's gonna
Go
play
even
Charles
younger.
Xavier? Are we gonna go younger? Juan Carlos was actually hoping to play Professor Xavier at one point. So I know that there's a lot of talk and hyperbole in regards to the X-Men in the MCU. And I like the fact that they're kind of sprinkling in stuff here and there. I mean, I think we've had multiple mutant references or X-Men references, if you will, in just about every film since Miss Marvel or the TV show Miss Marvel. You know, I think we've had references to the X-Men ever since then, which is nice. But at this point, I think it's kind of time to just embrace it. Just bring him into the fold. Figure out a way to let's get this X-Men versus Avengers thing rolling at some point here. Let's get this House of M. Let's get this going, man. I think we're ready for the next big shakeup in Marvel. And I think doing these X-Men is going to be the best way to bring that shakeup. Now, the question becomes, do we have solo Marvel films for these solo X-Men and bring them to the X-Men together? Or do we have like the X-Men originally and then have a Wolverine movie and have the Wolverine movie tie into the X-Men to where it becomes this X-Men event? You know what I mean? Like there's so many different ways we can play this now because we've already seen the formula work for the Avengers. So you bring in them all in solo to form the Avengers, and now they are the Avengers. So we bring the X-Men in as individual mutants, or as much as you can, because all the other ones were the originals. That Wolverine was not an original X-Men, and you bring them all in to form the X-Men as we know them today. I got ideas, man. I got ideas. I got
You
ideas.
do. Yeah, we're gonna get you out over there to Marvel. Get you
Let's
in
do
that
this,
meeting with
man.
Kevin Feige. Absolutely.
He's not taking my
But
calls. Surprisingly, he's not.
yeah,
He's not taking my calls.
same with mine. Yes, absolutely. But Sony's not taking my calls on rebooting Starship Troopers. So what are we
Ah,
gonna do?
darn it.
Yes, I have a big plan. It would make them a lot of money, but oh well. It is what it is. But my friend, again, it is still great talking to you about that. So your overall impressions is that you're really high on it. I'm happy for you. I'm happy when my friends see something in a much more positive light than I do.
Mm,
It pleases me. My daughter, as I mentioned to you, my older daughter saw it with me, and she really enjoyed it. She called it one of the best post pandemic Marvel films that has been out there. So I'm really happy that she enjoyed it. Again, I'm not saying it's a bad movie. It's certainly not the Marvels.
5.7 is not a good movie.
Yeah, it's not a good movie, but it's a pass. It's a pass for me, barely.
Okay. All right. So
You
what did
know,
you
and
I'm curious, Gerald. What did you rate Multiverse of Madness?
uh, and the Multiverse of Madness, I actually, ironically, I rated it not much higher than it, of
So
course.
this was worse than Multiverse of Madness for you.
Yes, just by a hair. It's actually, yeah, just right below
The
Multiverse of
Marvels.
Madness.
What did you rate this to compared to the Marvels?
The Marvels, how shall I say this kindly? I
Oh
can't really say this.
man, Gerald, you about to blow my mind now. You cannot tell me
The
that you
Marvels is
rated the Marvels better than this.
No, the Marvels is the worst movie of all the entire MCU. That's if I got my entire list at
All
popculturecosmos.wordpress.com,
right.
you'll find the
I'm hitting
Marvels
it
at the
up.
very
Yep.
top of the page. Let's put it this way, because I go from bottom down, bottom up,
hmm
excuse me, and the
hmm
top of the page. Yeah, you'll find Marvels at the very top of the page, and that's not a good thing. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
Incredible Hulk, you have a successor. You've been there for what? Since I started writing that article, like 8 years, 9 years ago. It was at the very top as far as being the worst. But now you have something that took its place. So I'll leave it at that. But yes,
Copy
it's
that.
not the worst. But I do
Mhm.
put it in the lower echelon of Marvel films for me, as far as Captain America: Brave New World. I wanted something more, and I just didn't get it. So.
Yeah, fair enough.
But I'm hopeful that the Thunderbolts will, catapult this even more. And then also, of course, the Fantastic Four, everybody seems to have high hopes for. And again, before we head on out, I want to hear your
Yeah,
thoughts on what your thoughts are for this year for Marvel. They said, "Oh yeah, we're going to slow down. We're going to slow down.
not
We're going to
this
slow
year.
down." Not this year. They got 3 going on, plus a Daredevil series coming next month. So even if you don't think, or you do think that they did well, or you think they struck out, there's still going to be many other options for people to go ahead and. I want to see a development and a point to where we can get it to Doomsday, and I just don't see that point really as of yet. That post-credit scene really doesn't do it for me because it really didn't tell me anything I or didn't already know.
Well, no, and I don't think that the point of that end credit scene was to do that. I think the point of that end credit scene was really kind of just bring everything home for this particular film. And I'm okay with stories within stories, not necessarily having this huge zinger at the end that changes something or catapults us to the next place. I think we've kind of moved not past it because there's obviously people that still desire that, right? But I think we've gotten to this point with storytelling with Marvel where we're expecting an end credit scene, but we have to be okay with it not being this world changing or complete setup. I mean, you looked at again, I referenced Spider-Man Homecoming, and the irony in that end credit scene saying that having patience, but sometimes patience is not always rewarded. Da 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 da, and it being kind of like a funny little haha, you really didn't get an end credit scene that you thought you were going to get. But in saying that, it's okay to have those kind of end credit scenes for me. I don't necessarily see it as always having to set up the next movie. It shouldn't always be the previous movie's job to set up the next film from the standpoint of the expectation or the excitement. Um,
Mhm.
Not necessarily, right?
But it
If
did
it
in a
happens,
way.
then
Actually while the post-credit scene I thought was very bad,
mhm.
the Bucky scene with just a few couple throwaway lines set up the Thunderbolts. You know,
Yeah,
it
but that
did
wasn't a
it did what you said was you don't they don't need to do, but it did it anyways.
but was that a post credit? Was that during his
No, it's during,
conversation?
but
And
see, it did more. It did more to help advance what is upcoming than what the post credit scene did.
for sure, but we were talking about post credit scenes doing that.
Yeah, I
I'm saying
know.
the
No,
post
no, I
credit
was
scene doesn't
just saying
necessarily
that's
need
how
to.
bad the post credit scenes. Post credit scenes are either to usually to enter something that's entertaining that relates it to that movie, or something
Hmm.
that's supposed to advance the
Hmm.
MCU story forward, and it did neither. It was just like it was there.
Thought it
It
was
was
just a
poorly
nice
put
little
together.
tie-in. And now it was poorly put together. I will 100% stand with you on that. It was very
Mm,
poorly put together, but the concept I thought was very, very nice. And again, I thought it
okay.
was very cool seeing Betty Ross back into the MCU.
But that wasn't a
Because
post-credit scene. That wasn't Betty Ross. I'm talking about the scene with just Anthony Mackie when he goes
oh
to the leader. Yeah,
yeah,
let's not talk about the
that's very
CGI
true.
Betty Ross. I'm not even talking about the CGI Betty Ross scene
Gotcha.
with
Yeah, I guess that technically
yeah,
wasn't it. Yeah, that wasn't a
that
post. That
technically
wasn't
wasn't
post
either. Just
credit.
like
Yeah,
yeah,
you're right. You're right.
I just thought the
You're
scene
right.
with Bucky and Sam
Hmm.
was more beneficial to what's upcoming in the MCU than what the post credit scene did. Now the post credit scenes don't again have to be something that has to, you know, advance the MCU storyline, but at least be something that's entertaining or a little funny thing that happened that relates to the movie you just saw.
Yes.
And it
Yeah,
didn't
that's
do
fair.
either. It didn't do
That's
either.
fair. As
Oh,
as I
there's
think
stuff
about
out
that,
there. There's a high
mm,
probability there's stuff out there. Oh, really?
yeah. You think?
No blink. Sherlock.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You know what? As you say that, and as I realized that the Betty Ross was actually not post credit. You're right.
Yes.
You're right. That post credit scene.
CGI Betty Ross. Yes.
Yes,
CGI.
I am okay with saying, you know what, you are absolutely right. That post credit scene was unnecessary and it didn't do anything for it because it truly didn't. And Betty Ross was not post credit. That was before the credits. So
Yes.
you're right. I stand corrected.
Well, that's again, it just to me defines what this movie is all about is something where you had good intentions going in, but it just wasn't executed to my level of satisfaction, especially after being away so long from the theaters, you want to come back with something really special that people talk about. And while there are
Mhm.
individuals such as yourself and my daughter, and some people that are championing the film that like it, and I'm really happy for those people. Trust me, I'm really happy for those people. For the most part, we will see. It's again, critical reception has not been kind to it. Audience scores are not overwhelmingly great. The second week will dictate whether or not this movie has any lasting power
It
until the
won't.
Thunderbolts
It
come
was too.
out.
It won't. I can definitively say that it won't have any real lasting power. People are not going to be super sold on going to see this film for various different reasons. And that's a conversation for a different podcast. But there's very reasons people are not going to be super sold on this film outside of the fact that it just really didn't, for a lot of people, do it in the standpoint of progress the story or progress things the way they wanted to be progressed. I can almost I can almost guarantee that it won't do it. It won't have the legs. It won't be. I don't think it'll be quite as bad as MOM as far as its
Mhm.
drop off, but it'll be pretty bad.
So there you have it, my friend. And along with me, Gerald Glassford, it is TJ Johnson. So our thoughts on Captain America Brave New World. Looking forward to hearing everyone's thoughts out there. Please let us know, popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. But you have a few minutes left, my friend. I know that
Absolutely.
some good things that are out there. SNL hit 50 years.
Didn't they
Your
though?
thoughts? Do you have any memories of SNL before I get into some Xbox love here before we
You
head on out?
know, you know, I don't have a whole lot of SNL memories. Unfortunately, we didn't watch growing up a ton of SNL. We were much more in living color. We had our different variety shows, but it really wasn't
Mhm.
SNL. I've had some experience with SNL more recently than not, but nothing's been too crazy. Honestly, the times I watched the most SNL was when they had like WWE stars like The Rock or somebody else on there where it was kind of you seen them in a different
I
light
still
and kind of
remember The Rock's first performance, TJ.
I
I don't know
do too.
if you remember, he did the opening
I
monologue,
do.
and he was so nervous.
He
And this is so
was.
funny because we've seen him on this on in the ring cutting promos,
Yes.
no problem. But he goes on
Yes.
here on this stage, and he is swaying back and forth because he's so nervous,
Yep.
so hard and so definitively, you can see the cameraman had to adjust by moving back and forth himself. That to me was hilarious. But I will
Yes.
say that it was nice to see his fellow WWEers at that time come up to him, whether they were face or heel, and
And
wish
kind
him
of
good
egg them
luck on
on.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that's part of what endeared that particular episode of SNL to me so much is seeing these characters who we are used to being very brash and have all this bravado and have all this machismo, all of a suddenly they're like they're fishes out of water. And it was really, really good. It was a lot of fun just to see that in real time. And then obviously he went on to do SNL, I think two or three more times after that. And obviously, as his Hollywood star rose, he became much more affluent in working the camera and working at SNL. So it was always fun to see that. But that's really the most I've ever watched of SNL was the when the WWE was on there, things of that nature.
Okay. Well, again, for me, I've been in and out of SNL over the course of decades. I'm not a huge fan of my older daughter. Again, she is a huge fan of SNL. She's caught on to it in recent years. I have been in and out of it, over the years. So I'm not a huge fan of it itself. I always, know when there's controversy on the show,
Mm,
whether it's a music artist, making a statement, whether it's a certain um, character that they're doing in a sketch making a statement or whatnot.
mm,
I would have not advised some of these characters being put into a theatrical format like they did in the 90s. They seem to really go to that, as we saw. Yeah, some of them didn't quite work out on film on a more expanded role than what we thought.
right.
But again, I don't have any great memories as well either of it. I just have some casual memories. But
Yeah.
yes, no one can deny the importance of pop culture and the legacy that SNL will leave behind. even though it's not going anywhere anytime soon, but 50 years in, the talent. I think for a lot of the talent, the thing I take the
Yes.
most is young talent that they found. I don't want to say they discovered because they were already working, but that they found and that they were able to help give them a platform, to the
Yes.
Adam Sandlers, the
Yes.
Will Ferrells, stuff like
Yes.
that during the 90s,
The
of
Dana
course, the 70s.
Carveys.
Yeah, during the 80s and whatnot.
Mhm.
The 70s, with well, we even the 80s with Billy Crystal,
Billy
who's on for
Crystal. Yep.
yeah, and Ben Stiller, and
Mhm.
whatnot during the 80s. But the 70s, uh, with the original crew and how I mean, they were all fresh faces and brought onto the screen. Yeah. So, and then of course in the 2000s, we've seen some individuals really start to take a step up away from their work with SNL. So yeah, that's probably the thing I take from it most is the
Yeah.
sheer platform that it's had in helping some of these young stars grow and become, in some cases, huge stars that we know today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The Kenan Thompsons, who was already a star
Mhm.
prior to with his time on Nickelodeon and being a member of the cast of Good Burger and cast of all that. And it's fun, as we get older, Gerald. I know I can say as I've gotten older, it's been fun to see a lot of these people that I've grown up watching mature as well. And you almost feel like they're a part of your story because you've gotten to watch them mature. You've gotten to watch them grow. I remember Keenan Thompson, again, way, way, way back in the day on Nickelodeon, and how he had a certain je ne sais quoi, if you will, a,
Mhm.
a certain presence about himself even then. And he was obviously just a young pup, and I think we're probably roughly the same age. So I've gotten to see his progression and his maturity from being an actor or being a comedian, and allowing those avenues that SNL provided for him, and other mediums, other networks provided for him, to kind of really allow him to really spread his wings, so to speak, and be essentially who he is today. You look at another actress like Maya Rudolph, who, especially over recent years, with her claim to fame being able to do a spot on impersonation of Kamala Harris, um, just be able to really take the SNL platform and allow it to uh, catapult her into the next level, which was movies and other roles, and just other levels of stardom. It's really cool, and I think the biggest thing about that legacy is, as you mentioned, is what they've been able to do for those actors, and those giving them a different platform, a bigger platform to showcase their talents to the world and allow them to see
Yeah.
just how talented they really are.
I mean, Eddie Murphy, uh,
Yes,
Chris Farley, David Spade,
yes,
there's a
yes.
list that goes on and on, in regards to that. So
John
yeah,
Belushi, yes,
yes.
yes.
And again, that whole original cast, Dan Aykroyd, Chevy Chase,
Mhm.
what they catapulted to them in
Jim
the
Belushi.
80s
I'm
as
sorry, I
well.
said John. Jim Belushi, not John
Yeah,
Belushi.
Jim Belushi and Tom Belushi. Well, Jim
Yeah,
Belushi was on there too, so
yeah,
I'll leave it at that. But again, it is of course Saturday Night Live's 50th anniversary, and want to wish them all the best. But before we head on out, we have less than
yeah, man.
7 minutes.
Okay.
Xbox, my friend, is coming out. This we've waited all this time. People talk to me about this, and I've had conversations with other people about that, and I tell them this: if Xbox had had its stuff together like it does now, back around the time just when the Xbox 360 was evolving into the Xbox One, they would be in the position PlayStation is right now as far as dominance in the market, or Nintendo in the marketplace, because they would have had all these games come out to all this great reception and all this great fanfare, which would have led to great sales worldwide. But unfortunately, ever since they when they had introduced the Xbox One, it all went downhill from there, and they've been trying to recover and scramble ever since. And they've just been making wrong move after wrong move after wrong move. Well, they're finally making some right moves. They're finally bringing out
Hmm.
games on a left and right basis, especially when their competition is not doing so. Avowed
Hmm.
hits Well, actually, for some people, it's already out. If you
It's
bought
already out now, yeah.
yeah, but for everyone else, it'll be out here tomorrow. Actually, probably when people are listening to this, most people listening on the 18th. Your thoughts, my friend, on Avowed from Obsidian before we head on out?
I've heard a lot of good things, but I really, Jared, if you would allow me to, I'd like to really touch base more on the Xbox aspect of what you were referring to. I've been championing Xbox on this podcast and any other, opportunity that I've had for quite some time now. And in championing Xbox, I've said that their game is no longer consoles. Now, it was never to indicate that they would not continue to make consoles or continue to make devices for you to enjoy their entertainment on. But the fact of the matter is that the entertainment is no longer just focused on console sales. Their gaming division is more focused on, again, the ecosystem and having the Xbox brand, the Microsoft brand in every home available, in every way imaginable. And even if that means taking those games and putting them on competitors' consoles, if that means continuing to keep the Xbox brand alive and well, and continuing them to allow them the opportunity to make consoles and to make these different devices for us to enjoy their platform on. I'm for it. I can understand some of the purists being a little bit frustrated, if you will, for their lack of having, what did I buy Xbox for? Well, you bought an Xbox to enjoy Xbox games, and granted, you don't have to buy an Xbox to necessarily enjoy those games moving forward. But the best way to play an Xbox game is always going to be on the Xbox console. But the other thing about it is giving them the opportunity to have a choice in how they want to enjoy those games, which I think is another huge thing in and of itself. I'm hearing amazing things about Avowed. I have not had the pleasure of playing it myself yet. I did not do the early access. I did not pay the money for the big package, and I'm okay with that. I've got enough to keep me occupied until that game comes out, and probably enough to keep me occupied well after that game comes out. However, I will be playing it. I'm definitely looking forward, and I think it's high time that Xbox finally had something to say. You know, we hear you, and we've been trying, we've been working on it. They obviously, you know, at some point we have to stop using the pandemic as an excuse. But with the time that it takes to develop these games, the pandemic was absolutely a real thing for
Hmm. Absolutely, absolutely.
understanding
TJ,
that, Gerald, and understanding that aspect.
yeah,
Yep, am I still there?
yes, you are, my friend. Got
Oh, okay, all
two
right,
minutes left.
gotcha. Uh,
Still with you, my friend. Still with you here. Got you here. I still got you here. All right. It is TJ
yep.
Johnson. Got you
Okay.
right back. Yeah, there you go. All right.
Yep. But
It's
and
trying to leave you.
with
It's
that
trying to
being
leave
said,
you, but we
it
still
is
got you
time.
here. Yes.
it's
It's
it's it's
time
time
indeed.
that they've got an opportunity to show that off. So that's awesome.
Yes, it is, my friend. Absolutely. Your signal tried to leave you when you started to say stuff about Xbox, but you fought through it, my friend. You fought
Yes,
through it.
sir.
But once again, it is Avowed coming this week. If you want to go ahead and get it, it's available for purchase for Xbox systems, but also it's available on Game Pass as well. So looking forward to getting my hands on it to see how it will scratch that fantasy itch. But my friend, any last thoughts on a great episode? Thanks to you, TJ Johnson, before we head on out.
Oh man, I'm just grateful to be here, Joe. Thank you for having me.
Always great to have you here, my friend. It is, of course, TJ Johnson. Despite our disagreements on said Captain America, we still encourage you to go check it out and have opinions yourself. So please let us know.
Absolutely.
But always just such a great part of what we do here. Cannot thank you enough for stopping by. You're like, oh, when do you want to talk about this, TJ? Now, I want to talk about it now. I said, okay, all right, let's go ahead.
No time like the present, brother.
No time like the present, indeed. But of course, it is my good friend TJ Johnson. It's Gerald Glassford. Thanks so much again for watching this thing. Please like and subscribe, and please always be part of what we're doing right here in the pop culture cosmos. Thanks, everyone. Be safe.